Good morning. I figured I'd take you for a ride in Albert, which is a D90, and it's an Albert Blue, which is a Porsche color. So today I'll review the performance and some of the specs of this build. So starting in the exterior, the first thing you'll notice that it's a Porsche Albert Blue, which was a popular color back in the late 60s, early 70s, and it is a very brilliant blue. It's a very pretty blue. It's a non-metallic blue. And we did the entire cabin and the entire exterior in this Albert Blue just because it's so spectacular. And I will apologize, we are on some back roads in farm country, so these roads are definitely bumpy and full of potholes, but you'll get really a good idea about this build. So before I get into it, let me let you just hear some sound and see some performance. So right now I'm in 4th gear. And 5th. So just cruising, the truck is not straining at all, just a comfortable speed for these roads, narrow roads, and 60 miles an hour, and then there's a cow. So accelerator, I'm barely giving it any accelerator. And we'll give it a little more when we get on this straight here in 5th gear. So I think the thing you'll notice is it's very quiet in the cabin. This does have sound deadening, as all Helderburgs do. So continuing with the outside, again, I mentioned it's a D90. It is on a standard ride height. It has a 265/75 16 tire, which is a BF Goodrich KM3, which is a mud terrain tire. So you'll get some tire noise on these, but you trade the tire noise for a more rugged looking tire. They're not overly noisy, but they're great tires and they do well in any condition. The alternative would have been the KO2, but they don't look as rugged, and the whole idea to this build is to give it that semi-rugged gentleman look. It does have tinted windows, and it does have the billet aluminum Helderburg hinges on the doors, the brackets on the windscreen, and then the hinges on the bonnet. It also has the billet aluminum Helderburg door handles, which are so sexy that they've got the finger grooves in the back of them, and billet aluminum. They're almost sensual. It does have the louvers in the bonnet, and that's just for the rugged look. It doesn't serve any purpose, but it does look good. It does have the Puma bonnet, which the Puma bonnet is not standard with this model, because this model was a 1996. But that hump does look nice. As I said, tinted windows, and it's just a nice, I guess you could call it classic, but simple look behind it. It does have LED lighting all the way around, LED headlights, LED stoplights, turn signals, and then it has LED lighting inside too, behind the gauges, and then the courtesy lights. So moving to the interior again kept it classic, simple. And my idea of classic is not what would have been in a 1995 Land Rover Defender, because that classic would have been a vinyl and a fabric. Very simple. This one has a two-tone interior that we put in. So it's basically a black and a gray. So you've got to really look to notice the contrast. But then it does have blue stitching to complement the exterior. It is a diamond stitch seating. These are the Puma seats, which the Puma seats are very comfortable. You can sit in these all day long. for long drives and be comfortable. It has the taller center console, and the steering wheel is one of our standard sizes, which is a Helderburg steering wheel. Then the headliner is an Alcantara suede, which is an Italian Alcantara. The dash has been wrapped, so the upper dash and the lower dash. And it does have our custom designed air conditioning and heating combo system, which is high efficiency. So it was important to make sure that the air conditioning works extremely well, but so does the defrost by using our system that way. It does have thicker glass. Instead of the standard 4mm, it has a 5mm glass, which helps cut down on sound and also keeps it cooler or warmer in the cabin depending on what you're running. It does have a larger turbo hopping around, but I mentioned the turbo because you can hear it ever so slightly. It is a variable turbo too. Black carpet, and it's a nice build, which I think you will agree. Some other things to note on the exterior and the performance. It does have a larger intercooler. It has a custom built injection pump, larger turbo. Somebody parked something in the road there, kind of caught me by surprise. But it does have sway bars front and rear, which again is not a standard on Defenders, but it is a standard on a Helderburg. And what that does is that keeps it from doing all the body roll. So if you're doing on ramps and off ramps, you don't get all of that body roll. Steering pump does have assisted power steering. The steering pump's been reworked, so it is very easy to steer. I mean, you can steer it with 2 fingers, but that's standard on all Helderburgs. The brakes are the standard Helderburg brakes. These are not the big reds, but they do give some really good stopping power. And so I'll give you a display of stopping power. You ready, Mike?
Yep.
Okay. So let me bring the speed down so it's not a crazy stop. So I'm going to bring it down to, let's say, around 40, and then we're going to stop. So there you go. The rebuilt Defenders do not have ABS brakes. None of them do, because that would require electronics. And 2.5 turbo diesel, which is a mechanical fuel injection, but this build has no computer whatsoever. So that makes reliability very good. To tune up one of these motors, you change the oil about every 3,000 miles, and then you will adjust the valves. But I've seen many of these go for, or I should say still going at 500, 600,000 miles, and they have not needed any significant work. The parts are plentiful, the parts are easy to get, and this one does have a handful of the Helderburg performance parts. It is a 5-speed manual transmission, but we have changed the gearing in it, so it's designed more for the highway. So, interesting fact, Land Rover, when they created the Range Rover, they did use this motor, but when they put it in the Defender, they detuned it, and they also changed the gearing. Reason being is they wanted to create more torque, and so more torque in the motor, but then different gearing in the front and rear differentials, transmission, because these trucks were originally built for farmers to use on their farm to haul sheep or do whatever they want to do. But for the modern day use of it and everything, all we did is we retuned it, so it is does have more horsepower and more torque than what Land Rover did with the Range Rover originally. But then we did change the gearing and the transmission and the front and rear differentials to match that of the Range Rover, so it can be used for basically trips and just to drive on the highways. I mean, because not many of our clients are hauling sheep or working on a farm with their Defender. but you still do have good gearing, so if you want to do some off-roading, you can definitely do that without issue. And you've probably seen a number of the videos where I do off-roading with this gearing, and it has no problem at all. I mean, you can run with your buddies that are all driving Jeeps, it won't be any problem. So more on the interior, this one does have a backup camera. It does have a 7-inch touchscreen Alpine with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, whichever you prefer. Steep hill, 3rd gear. And that was probably about 20% accelerator, so it had no problem. This is one thing you have to watch out around here, is horse and buggies. So one question I get is about turning radius. Well, you can see that this is a very narrow country road. So let me get over to the side of it and I'll show you. It's barely wide enough for 2 cars, but let me show you turning radius. Full lock, so that's 1. Full lock back, that's 1 more. And then full lock 1 more time, and we turned around completely. So turning radius is not an issue. Again, this is a D90, which 90 stands for, really, it's 90 inches from center of axle to center of axle. Unless you want to be exact, it's actually 93 inches. But for marketing purposes, Land Rover decided 90 sounds better than 93. So that's what makes it a 90, D90. Some interesting facts about the Defender. The Defender actually did not get its name until 1990, even though the first one was built for a D90 was in 1984. The D110 was in 1983, but they called it a D110 in 1983 until 1990. Actually, it was late of 1989 that they started calling it a Defender. And then 1984 is when the D90 came out, and they just called it D90. But when they built the Discovery, the Land Rover Discovery, which they needed to come up with some new naming, so then that's when the Defender name came into existence. Before 1983, the Land Rover, they had what was called the Land Rover Series. So they went through a few of those. It was a Land Rover Series 1, Series 2, Series 3, and there was some different ones in there, like a 2A, where they made advancements. The big difference in the D90, D110 versus the series trucks was a number of motors, but the biggest thing was the suspension. So this one does have coil springs at all 4 corners versus the series trucks had leaf springs. So the benefit of the coil springs on the Defender is the articulation. So if you're off-roading, the wheels you'll get a lot more articulation to keep traction on the ground, but also the ride comfort. So a Defender is much more comfortable than a series truck is. And you know Land Rover did something extremely well, did it right with the Defender, because there is a number of clone Defenders out there that are not true British-built Defenders. Granted, Land Rover did sell the rights to a number of these companies, but that's pretty much all they share is the name. They don't share drivetrain, and they don't even share parts. So they are clones, and they look much like a Defender. The drawback of those is it's hard to get parts on any of those, like the Octar, the Santana, any of those. So any of them made in Turkey, South Africa, Japan, the list goes on, they're not as desirable. They won't go up in value like a British-built Land Rover Defender. And if it's a Helderburg, it has shown that a Helderburg does increase in value more than a standard build. And it's because of the attention to detail. And you've heard me mention it in a number of videos too, that one of the things that's important if you want a Defender that's going to continue to go up in value is the drivetrain. This being the 2.5 liter turbo diesel is original configuration. This is a numbers matching, and that's what people want. That's what individuals are looking for. There's a number of companies that are doing the Corvette LS3 to create a hot rodder, and if that's something you want, that's fine, but just know it's not going to go up in value. It's going to depreciate like a normal car. If you do the hot rodder version, at time of recording this video, cost on one of those is between $250,000 to $300,000 new if you get it built. But then when you buy it used on the secondary market, they're going for around anywhere from $100,000 to, let's say, $130,000. So that's significant depreciation. And they will probably depreciate even farther from that. But one of these, a Defender with the matching numbers and original configuration, over the last 10 years, they've gone up in value by over 480%. That's not according to me, that's according to HAGI, which is the Historic Automobile Association that tracks the value of classic cars. So that was a mouthful. So let me just be quiet and you can listen to it. Fourth gear. A little bit of gas. So if I haven't touched on anything, any information that you would like about a Defender in general, the Defender history, or a Helderburg build, then just comment. And if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure and subscribe to the video. And if you're watching it on one of the other sites, then check out the YouTube channel, Helderburg, because there's a lot of videos that we have up there. I mean, and we cover everything. Frequently asked questions about Land Rovers, and I think you'll find something up there that will be benefit. I mean, we talk about everything. Insurance, will it fit in your garage, size comparisons, and everything. So, but I appreciate it. And again, if there's any questions, just let us know.